everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Elijah Hutchinson. I'm from the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. But I am originally from Brooklyn, and I still live in the neighborhood that I grew up in, Greenpoint, not too far away, probably very familiar to some of you. But with everything that's going on right now, and as difficult as some of these times are, it's really important for me to be here with you today and to be with a lot of the people who share our values around climate and seeing transformative change. Climate and these challenges are not going away, and as the agencies and public sector actors work, we remain incredibly committed and passionate about this work. And I'm excited about climate, but I'm even more excited about the New York of the future. And as challenging as these times are, we're contending with a lot of various different climate threats to our city. Most of you are already familiar with this, so I don't need to get too detailed on the stats. But I will say we have an incredible partnership with the New York City Panel on Climate Change, which localizes the IPCC projections to New York City and gives us really specific climate data for how climate's going to impact New York. By the 2030s, there could be up to 3 times as many days with temperatures above 90 degrees Fahrenheit than there were between 1981 and 2010. That means that we're also projecting up to 23 inches of sea level rise by the 2050s and around 5.5 feet of sea level rise by 2100. We could see up to 14% more precipitation by the 2050s and up to 30% more precipitation by 2100. And our climate has already changed. It's not changing. The National Climate Assessment reclassified New York City's climate as being humid subtropical. So very different from what the city was designed and built for. And we're no longer in the same kind of conditions and atmosphere that we are used to. It's hotter and it's wetter, and with these changes in temperatures, it's essentially like having an extra month of summer. MOCEJ, the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, prioritizes data accessibility and transparency. We believe in information being accessible and usable to the public, nonprofits, and community organizations because it's a critical policymaking tool and it democratizes climate science and allows us to communicate with the public and our environmental justice communities that we work so closely with. This year, New York City released the first of its kind and really landmark report for any large city in the United States called EJNYC, Environmental Justice New York City. And I encourage you all to go online and check out the report and the mapping tool that we made publicly available that has over 100 different data layers inside of it, including overlays of political districts that identifies disadvantaged communities in New York City for the first times and defines environmental burdens and benefits and how they're distributed across the city. No longer are we just talking about climate statistics, we're talking about climate stats and adding socioeconomic, demographic, racial data so that we're looking at disparity and we're measuring impacts and how it affects the lived experience of being inside of New York. These data sets and these tools include new indexes for heat vulnerability and flood vulnerability. So if you're a New Yorker or you're just curious or you're a researcher, you're trying to advocate for your community, you can now see how does my neighborhood compare to others for flood risk, not just from coastal storm surges, but also inland flooding from intense rain events. Not just today, but also from 2020 in the 2050s, in the 2080s, and going out through 2100. It's an incredible tool and resource that we've developed here in New York City that I'm really proud of everybody who worked and collaborated with it, including our Environmental Justice Advisory Board and We Act, who we're working with to launch the next phase of work, which is coming up with the policies and programs that are going to address the harms and hazards that we identified within the first phase of the report. We're also using data in other ways, including FloodNet, a partnership that we have with academic institutions and local community-based organizations. If you go to FloodNet right now, you can see that we have over 200 sensors that give you real-time flooding information, including depths and all historical flooding data at points all across New York City in the 5 boroughs, which is really incredible because you can check out at the point at you can check out a sensor at any location and see, has it ever flooded in this neighborhood that I'm thinking about moving in? How deep and when and how frequently, how often? And we are targeting launching hundreds of sensors citywide very soon. In Plan YC, which is the city's long-term climate plan, it's the plan that our office produces. We set a goal of launching climate tech innovations, commercialization, scaling up opportunities across industries. And this this panel is really why we're here, because this is a part of our goals. With the Green Economy Action Plan, we have identified that the green economy is going to be a significant portion of the GDP of New York City, anticipated to be 400,000 jobs and increasing quite rapidly. We're making major investments, including a $100 million hub in the Brooklyn Army Terminal, the Climate Exchange, other investments in industry cities, and other climate hubs around New York. And the city is also exploring innovative other ways to use data in these tools that are becoming available, including new models of parametric insurance that allow New Yorkers who are underinsured or may not have access to those financial resources to get immediate payouts after a climate event happens. And we're doing that in partnership with the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. In Plan YC, we also announced our efforts to work with our New York City Housing Authority to install over 30,000 heat pumps and 10,000 NYCHA units across the city, and are getting ready to release the results of our first heat pump pilot with NYCHA very soon. And leading by example is a key pillar of our approach for climate innovation. Fossil fuel construction equipment emits pollutants and noise and endangers people's health on construction sites and neighborhoods all across New York City. If you're a New Yorker, you know what it's like to live next to a construction site. To address that, this past Friday, we announced in collaboration with C40 that New York City has formed the North American Electric Construction Coalition. The coalition is a group of cities that commit wherever possible to use clean construction equipment on city projects, and includes other cities like Austin, Montreal, San Diego, Philadelphia, Boulder County, and Los Angeles, and multiple industry partners. Other global cities use electric construction equipment, especially in Europe, but the North American market is nascent. The signatories that are on this coalition spent over $13 billion on construction, and forming this coalition, we know will spur significant market growth and hopefully move the needle for the availability of electric construction equipment in a neighborhood near you. And we can't achieve these environmental justice targets without jobs. So we're laser focused on connecting the opportunities, the skills training, the workforce development opportunities where we can, so that we can have local benefits to these, all of our climate initiatives. So I'll talk a little bit too about our accomplishments for this past year. This is actually my 1-year anniversary of having this appointment. My first week was the 9/29 rainstorm, which was devastating and flooded a lot of places across New York City, especially basement apartments. But in the last year, I'll just run through a few things of what's going on in the climate office today. We released the city's first long-term energy plan that the city of New York has ever had, called Power Up NYC. We remediated our 1,000th site through the New York City Voluntary Cleanup Program, which is the largest municipal environmental remediation program in the United States. We released the first climate budget for any large city in the United States, with joining cities like Barcelona, Berlin, London, Milan, and more. And we released the city's first urban agriculture report as well, connecting our food systems and plants and greenery to our climate and our drainage and our other priorities. As I mentioned, we released the environmental justice report and the mapping tool that's publicly available, but we also broke ground on several large-scale coastal infrastructure projects, some of which are going to be opening in this year, including Eastside Coastal Resilience, broke ground on the Battery Coastal Resilience, and the opening of 2 bridges in Brooklyn Bridge Montgomery Coastal Resilience, a system of flood walls, barriers, open space, and parks underneath the FDR Drive. We also released with the New York City Panel of Climate Change, our independent advisory body, new climate projections and new data that we use to integrate into our city capital planning. And we also awarded over 400 electric school buses so that the buses that we're used to hearing and picking you up during the school day might be silent and creep up and try to get will be quiet when they pick up the kids and send them to school. We also won $250 million through the EPA's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and we'll be launching a public solar and community solar program using those funds. And even this morning, in the midst of all of this, we launched a new funding resource that reinvests carbon offsets to help affordable housing pay for energy efficiency and resilience measures that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford, using the framework of our local law 97, which is our landmark building regulation, which requires all large buildings in New York City to be net zero by 2050. But let's also talk about where we're heading and what is this future of New York in just a few years. We signed Green Rides, which is legislation that will require all rideshare vehicles in New York City to be electric or handicap accessible by 2030, a major marker mover which will push and force EV charging adoption across New York. We are also right at the City Council for City of Yes, our new housing plan, which will add hundreds of thousands, hopefully more, of units across the city in neighborhoods that have traditionally not contributed towards our increasing housing demands. By 2027, we're going to use the data that we have from the New York City Panel on Climate Change and integrate it into all city capital planning and all design projects so that we're designing for the future with heat and extreme weather on all of our publicly funded infrastructure and large-scale projects. We have an executive order that we're no longer just thinking about operational carbon, but we're going to require all of our city projects to look at embodied carbon, including life cycle analysis for our projects. We're committed to phasing out fossil fuels. We're committed to gas transition planning. And in addition to all of those transitions, we still have lots more of coastal infrastructure, new greenway and street projects to do all across the city. We're leading the way with innovating on maximum indoor air temperature policies. No longer would you be required to keep a space warm in the winter, but we also have to make sure that units are able to stay cool in the summer as these degrees get higher and indoor air temperature and indoor air quality gets worse. And we know that these policies are really important in some of our most disadvantaged communities because Black New Yorkers are twice as likely to die from heat than white New Yorkers, and 350 New Yorkers die every year from heat-related causes. We're launching a citywide housing mobility program so that people can decide, not just before a storm or not after a storm, but at any point to participate and buy and relocate and have options for where they would like to go because we know these climate impacts are going to be extreme for some of our neighborhoods. And we will also be launching our public solar program, have several new resilience hubs across the city, and launching new micromobility and marine highway activation opportunities and getting polluting trucks off our streets. So I'm really excited about the future. It's complex, it's really challenging. We have a lot of work to do, but we are super committed here to doing that work. And I really thank Newlab and all of the partners here today to learn from you all to learn from us. And thank you so much.